A mysterious arrival. The forest was dark and quiet, except for the soft rustling of leaves in the cold night wind. The Earth colony, tucked away in a remote part of the galaxy, had always been a peaceful place. The settlers had spent decades building homes, growing food, and surviving in harmony with their surroundings. But that night, something happened that would change everything. Dr. Samuel Caldwell, a scientist in his late 40s with a sharp mind and a curious heart, was walking back to his lab after a late-night meeting with the colony leaders. He liked the quiet of the night, the time when the world felt still and his thoughts could wander freely. But tonight, his thoughts were interrupted by a strange noise, a faint hum, almost like a distant whisper, coming from the woods. Samuel paused, his boots crunching softly on the dirt path. He turned his head toward the trees, squinting into the darkness. At first, he thought it might be the wind, but the sound was too steady, too deliberate. Curiosity got the better of him, and he stepped off the path, moving cautiously toward the source of the noise. As he walked deeper into the forest, the hum grew louder, and a faint glow began to appear ahead. It was like nothing Samuel had ever seen. A shimmering light, pale and silvery, casting strange shadows on the trees. His heart pounded with a mix of fear and excitement. Could it be an alien life form, a natural phenomenon, or something else entirely? When he reached the clearing, he froze. Standing in the middle of the glowing light was a figure, tall, slender and human-like in shape. Its skin shimmered as if made of liquid metal, reflecting the light around it. It had no clothes, but it didn't seem to need any. Its body adapted to the cold air effortlessly, and there was a sense of power and calm in its stance. The figure turned its head slowly, noticing Samuel. Its eyes, glowing faintly like molten silver, locked onto his. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Samuel felt his throat tighten, unsure whether to run or stay. Then the figure's lips parted, and it spoke in a calm, almost melodic voice. "Human," it said, "I don't need clothes." Samuel blinked, taken aback by the statement. He wasn't sure what he had expected the creature to say, but this was not it. The words hung in the air, strange and confusing. The creature's tone was neither threatening nor friendly. It was matter-of-fact, as if explaining the simple truth. Who are you?" Samuel finally managed to ask, his voice trembling slightly. The figure tilted its head, as if considering the question. "I am Nox," it replied. "That is the name you may use." "What are you?" Samuel asked, his fears slowly giving way to curiosity. He took a cautious step closer, his eyes scanning the strange being. Its body seemed to shimmer and shift subtly, as if it was alive in ways Samuel couldn't fully understand. "I am a result of your kind's actions," Nox said cryptically, "but I am not your enemy." Samuel frowned. "What do you mean? Are you human? An alien?" Nox's expression didn't change, but its glowing eyes seemed to brighten slightly. "I am not entirely human. I am not entirely alien. I exist because of choices made long ago. Choices your people have forgotten." Samuel's mind raced. He had spent years studying genetic modifications and the history of Earth's technological advancements. But this was beyond anything he had imagined. Was this creature the result of some secret experiment, a lost project from Earth's past? "Why are you here?" Samuel asked, his voice firmer now. "What do you want?" Nox stepped forward, its movements smooth and almost unnatural, like a machine but with the grace of a living being. "I am here to prepare you," it said. "There is a threat coming, one that your kind is not ready to face." A chill ran down Samuel's spine. The creature's words carried a weight that felt impossible to ignore. "What threat? What are you talking about?" Nox didn't answer immediately. Instead, it raised a hand, and the air around it shimmered with light. A holographic image appeared, a planet, barren and lifeless, its surface scared and empty. "This is what will happen if you are not prepared," Knox said simply. Samuel stared at the image, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. "Is that Earth?" "No," Knox replied. "But it could be. The harvesters are coming. They will strip your world of everything. Life, resources, hope. I am here to ensure that does not happen." The words hung heavily in the air. Samuel felt a mix of disbelief and dread. Was this creature telling the truth? Could it be trusted? He wanted to ask more questions, but before he could speak, Knox turned its glowing eyes on him again. "You have questions," it said as if reading his mind, "and I will answer them. But first, you must decide. Will you trust me, or will you waste precious time doubting me?" Samuel didn't know what to say. Trusting this strange being felt dangerous, but ignoring its warning could be even worse. For now, he had no choice but to take it back to the colony and figure out the truth. As the two began to walk back toward the settlement, the forest seemed quieter than before, as if holding its breath. And in the back of Samuel's mind, one thought kept repeating itself. This is only the beginning. The legacy of Caldwell. Back in the colony, the lab was a sterile, brightly lit space, filled with blinking consoles, tall shelves of equipment, and the faint hum of machinery. Dr. Caldwell led Knox inside, his mind buzzing with questions he couldn't yet bring himself to ask. The colonists stared as the shimmering figure walked past them, its metallic skin reflecting the light in mesmerizing patterns. Some whispered nervously, while others simply watched in silence, their expressions a mix of fear and awe. Knox's presence was unsettling, not because it was overtly threatening, but because it seemed so unnatural. Its calm demeanor and cryptic warnings only added to the tension. "You'll stay here," Caldwell said, motioning toward a diagnostic pod in the center of the lab. "If we're going to believe anything you say, we need to know what you are." Knox stepped toward the pod, pausing to glance at Caldwell. "You will not find answers in machines," it said. "Your tools can only measure what they understand. I am beyond them." Caldwell raised an eyebrow, ignoring the comment. "We'll see about that." As the pod whirred to life, scanning Knox's form, the data began pouring onto the lab's screens. Caldwell stared at the results, his skepticism quickly turning to shock. Knox's body wasn't just alien. It was a masterpiece of biology and technology. Its cells were self-repairing, adapting to environmental conditions in real time. It didn't have a heart or lungs. Instead, its internal systems operated on a level Caldwell couldn't fully comprehend. What truly baffled him, though, was the genetic signature embedded deep within Knox's structure. It was human. More specifically, it bore traces of a unique DNA sequence that Caldwell recognized immediately. It was a genetic marker left behind by his ancestors, the original settlers of the colony and pioneers of genetic research, his family's legacy. This can't be right," Caldwell muttered, leaning closer to the screen. Knox, still standing in the pod, turned its glowing eyes toward him. "It is correct. You see now what you have always been a part of." Caldwell's mind raced. Decades ago, his great-grandparents had been part of a controversial program on Earth. They had pushed the boundaries of genetic engineering, attempting to create humans capable of surviving extreme conditions. The experiments had been shut down after several failures, but it seemed the truth was far more complicated. Somehow, their work had led to the creation of Knox. "How do you know about this?" Caldwell demanded, stepping closer. "You said you weren't entirely human, but this is my family's work. Are you saying my ancestors created you?" Knox stepped out of the pod, its metallic skin shimmering as it moved. "Not directly," it said. "They planted the seeds. I am the result of those seeds, nurtured and evolved over centuries. Your family's experiments failed to create what they desired, but their work lived on in secret, passed down through technology and time." The room grew silent as Caldwell tried to process the implications. If Knox was telling the truth, then his family's legacy wasn't just a chapter in humanity's history. It was still unfolding. But there was something else bothering him, something he couldn't ignore. "Why now?" he asked. "Why come here after all this time? What does this have to do with the harvesters?" Nox's expression didn't change, but its voice grew softer, almost somber. "Your family's work was never meant to end with me. It was meant to prepare your kind for what is coming. The harvesters are drawn to signals of advanced life. Technology, energy, genetic modifications. Your ancestors' experiments sent ripples across the galaxy. They are coming because of what you created." The words hit Caldwell like a blow. He stared at Nox, a sinking feeling spreading through his chest. If this was true, then his family's ambition, their desire to push the boundaries of science, had put humanity in danger. As Caldwell wrestled with this realization, the colony's communication system crackled to life. "Dr. Caldwell, we've picked up something on the long-range sensors," a voice said. "You might want to see this." Caldwell glanced at Nox, whose glowing eyes seemed to glint with something close to understanding. "Show me," he said, stepping toward the nearest console. On the screen, a grainy image appeared, a massive object moving through the void of space, heading straight for their planet. It was dark and jagged, like a shard of broken metal, and its size was incomprehensible. Caldwell felt a chill run down his spine. "That is their vanguard," Nox said quietly. "A scout ship. The harvesters send them ahead to assess a planet's resources before the main fleet arrives." "How much time do we have?" Caldwell asked, his voice trembling. Nox tilted its head slightly. "Days, perhaps less. Your kind is not ready." The words were like a knife twisting in Caldwell's gut. He turned to Nox, his fear giving way to anger. "If you knew this was coming, why didn't you stop it? Why didn't you warn us sooner?" "I have been waiting," Nox replied. "Waiting for humanity to prove it is worth saving." Caldwell clenched his fists. The creature's cold logic infuriated him. But he knew it was right about one thing. Humanity wasn't ready. If they were going to survive, they would need to act fast. And whether he liked it or not, Nox was their only chance. "Then let's get ready," Caldwell said, his voice firm. "But make no mistake, if you're hiding anything from us, I will find out." Nox gave a small nod. Marcus bristled, but before he could retort, the colony's alarm system blared. Red lights flashed, and a robotic voice echoed through the halls. "Unidentified object entering atmosphere. Impact imminent. All personnel to shelters immediately." The room went silent for a heartbeat, then erupted into chaos. Caldwell grabbed a communicator, barking orders to the colony's leaders. "Get everyone underground. Now." Nox, however, remained perfectly calm. "This is a scout," it said. "It will not destroy the colony. Its purpose is to gather information and report back. If it succeeds, the harvesters will come in full force." "Then we need to stop it," Caldwell said, his heart pounding. "How do we destroy it?" "You can't," Nox replied. "But I can." The statement hung in the air like a challenge. Caldwell stared at Nox, his mind racing. He didn't trust it fully. How could he? But what choice did he have? If the scout ship transmitted their location, there would be no stopping the harvesters. "Fine," Caldwell said finally. "What do you need?" Nox turned to one of the screens, its eyes glowing brighter. "Open access to your colony's energy core. I will use it to amplify my abilities." Caldwell hesitated. The energy core was the colony's lifeline, powering everything from the shelters to the agricultural domes. If something went wrong, they would be left defenseless. "Samuel," Nox said, using his first name for the first time. Its voice was softer now, almost reassuring. "Trust is not built in a moment. But survival does not wait for trust. Let me do what I was made to do." Caldwell clenched his jaw, then nodded. "Do it." Nox stepped into the core chamber, its body shimmering as it interfaced with the colony systems. Lights flickered as the energy level spiked, and a deep hum filled the air. Outside, the scout ship descended, its jagged silhouette blocking out the stars. The settlers watched from their shelters, their fear palpable. Suddenly, a beam of light shot into the sky from the lab, piercing the darkness. Nox's form glowed brighter than ever, its body shifting and expanding, becoming something almost unrecognizable, a weapon, a shield, a force beyond human comprehension. The scout ship tried to evade, but Nox's energy struck it with unrelenting precision, tearing it apart midair. The explosion lit up the night like a second sun, and the colony trembled as debris rained down harmlessly in the distance. When the dust settled, Nox returned to the lab, its glowing form dimmer now, almost fragile. "The scout is destroyed," it said. "But they will come. They always come." Caldwell nodded grimly. "How long?" "Days," Nox replied. "Maybe less." As the colony began to regroup, Caldwell couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Nox had saved them. For now. But its cryptic warnings and inhuman power left more questions than answers, and as he watched it stand in the corner of the lab, silent and unreadable, one thought kept gnawing at him. The true threat. The colony settled into an uneasy silence after the destruction of the scout ship. People whispered about the glowing beam that had saved them, about Nox's impossible power, and about what might come next. In the dim corridors of the underground shelter, fear mingled with hope, creating a fragile balance. But Dr. Caldwell knew better than to take this quiet moment for granted. The real storm was still coming. Inside the lab, the air felt heavy with tension. Nox stood motionless, its metallic form dimmed since the attack. Its once vivid glow had faded to a faint shimmer, like dying embers. Caldwell watched it from across the room, trying to understand the creature, or being, or machine, or whatever it was. Nox was their savior, yes, but it was also a mystery he couldn't unravel. "What did you mean when you said, 'they always come'?" Caldwell asked, breaking the silence. Nox turned its head slowly, its glowing eyes meeting Caldwell's. "The harvesters are not a simple threat. They are an inevitability. They do not choose their targets. They are drawn to advanced life forms. Your colony's signal reached them long before you even realized it." Caldwell's stomach twisted. "How long ago?" "Generations," Nox replied. "Your ancestors' experiments, their ambition to push humanity beyond its limits, that is what called the harvesters here. They seek worlds with potential, where life has evolved to its peak. To them, such planets are prizes to be consumed." Caldwell's hands balled into fists. The weight of his family's legacy pressed heavily on his chest. His ancestors had always been pioneers, pushing boundaries in the name of progress. But had their ambition doomed this colony, and perhaps humanity itself? Nox continued, its voice calm but unyielding. "You cannot fight them with weapons. They adapt too quickly. They consume energy, turning it against you. The only way to survive is to deny them what they seek." Caldwell frowned. "And what do they seek?" "Life," Nox said simply. "Energy. Hope." Caldwell stared at Nox, his mind racing. "You're saying we have to destroy everything. Shut down the colony, abandon it. That's impossible. These people have built their lives here. We can't just give up." Nox's eyes flickered slightly, the only sign of emotion Caldwell had ever seen. "I did not say to abandon hope. I said to deny them. There is a difference." Before Caldwell could respond, the lab's door hissed open, and Marcus Hale stormed in, flanked by 2 other colonists. He looked angrier than ever, his scared face twisted with frustration. "Enough secrets," Marcus growled, pointing at Nox. "We deserve the truth. What are we up against, and why should we trust this thing?" Caldwell stepped forward, trying to calm the situation. "Marcus, now's not the time for—" "No," Marcus interrupted, his voice rising. "It's exactly the time. That thing might have saved us, but it's not human. It doesn't care about us. It's hiding something, and we need to know what." Knox, unbothered by the outburst, stepped forward. Its movements were slow, deliberate, as if it were conserving energy. "Your fear is understandable," it said, its voice steady. "But your anger is misplaced. The harvesters are coming, and every moment spent questioning me is a moment wasted." Marcus didn't back down. "And why should we believe you? For all we know, you're leading them here. Maybe you're just softening us up, waiting for the right moment to betray us." Before Caldwell could intervene, Knox raised a hand, and the air between them shimmered. A holographic projection appeared, showing the harvesters in terrifying detail. They were massive biomechanical constructs, their surfaces covered in pulsating veins of energy. They moved like living things, consuming entire planets with relentless efficiency. "This is what you face," Knox said, its voice softer now, almost mournful. "I was created to stop them, but even I cannot do it alone." The room fell silent as the colonists stared at the horrifying images. For the first time, Marcus looked uncertain. "And if we fight?" he asked quietly. Knox turned its glowing eyes on him. "Then you die." The next morning, Caldwell called a meeting in the colony's central hall. The colonists gathered, their faces pale with fear but resolute. Knox stood at the edge of the room, its presence a constant reminder of the strange reality they now faced. "We have two options," Caldwell began, addressing the crowd. "We can prepare to defend the colony, knowing the odds are against us. Or we can trust Knox's plan, whatever that may be." The room erupted in murmurs. People argued, debated, and pleaded for answers. Finally, a young woman named Kara, a farmer with a strong voice and a fierceness in her eyes, stood up. "What's the plan, Dr. Caldwell?" she asked. "What does Knox want us to do?" Caldwell glanced at Knox, who stepped forward. Its presence silenced the room instantly. "To survive," Knox said, "you must become invisible. Shut down all energy sources. Bury your technology. Hide yourselves in the earth, where even the harvesters cannot find you." The room exploded into protests. People shouted about losing their homes, their livelihoods, everything they had worked so hard to build. "Enough," Caldwell shouted, his voice cutting through the noise. "This isn't about what we want. It's about survival. If we don't act now, there won't be a colony left to save." Marcus stood, his jaw tight. "And what about the people who don't want to live like rats underground? What about fighting back?" Knox turned its glowing eyes to him. "You will not win, but you may buy time for others to live." The weight of Knox's words settled over the room. Slowly, reluctantly, the colonists began to accept the reality of their situation. Plans were made to shut down the colony systems, bury vital supplies, and prepare for the invasion. But as Caldwell watched Knox from across the room, he couldn't shake the feeling that the creature was holding something back. It had saved them once, but at what cost? And what price would they have to pay to survive the next attack? Deep in his heart, Caldwell knew one thing for certain. The harvesters were not just a test of humanity's strength. They were a test of its soul. Caldwell's revelation. The colony's lights went dark for the first time in decades. The once bustling settlement now lay in eerie silence, buried under layers of rock and soil to hide its presence from the harvesters. Deep within the underground shelter, the settlers worked tirelessly, storing resources, sealing equipment, and preparing for what felt like the end of their world. Fear lingered in every corner, but so did determination. If this was humanity's last stand, they would not go quietly. Dr. Caldwell sat alone in his lab, his mind heavy with questions that had no answers. Knox stood nearby, motionless as always, its faint glow the only source of light in the dim room. Caldwell turned toward the being, his frustration finally boiling over. "You're hiding something," Caldwell said, his voice sharp. "I studied every piece of data I can find, and none of it explains what you are. You claim to be a creation of my family's legacy, but you're more than that, aren't you?" Knox's glowing eyes flickered faintly. "You are correct," it said. But the truth is not simple. Caldwell stood, pacing the room. Then simplify it. You said my ancestors' experiments created you, but you're not just some genetic mutation. You're something else. Something more. Nox tilted its head, its metallic features reflecting the dim light. Your ancestors did not create me directly. They planted the seeds of my existence through their work, but I was born from the convergence of their ambition and the galaxy's need. Caldwell stopped pacing, narrowing his eyes. The galaxy's need. What does that even mean? Nox stepped forward, its presence imposing yet calm. Your ancestors sought to create a human capable of surviving anything. Their experiments failed to produce results in their lifetimes, but the knowledge they left behind was not lost. It was discovered, enhanced, and ultimately perfected by forces beyond Earth. Caldwell's heart raced. Forces beyond Earth. Are you saying aliens created you? Not in the way you think, Nox replied. Your ancestors' work was found by those who sought to weaponize it, to create beings that could fight the harvesters. I am the result of that effort, a fusion of human ingenuity and alien technology. I was made to protect, but my creators, they had their own plans. The word sent a chill down Caldwell's spine. What plans? To turn humanity into a tool, Nox said quietly. To make you soldiers in a war you did not start. I escaped them, but their influence lingers in my design. I was made to ensure your survival, but I cannot guarantee it will be without cost. Caldwell stared at Nox, the weight of its revelation sinking in. His ancestors had unknowingly set events in motion that led to this moment. The experiments they thought had failed had been the foundation for something far greater and far more dangerous. Why didn't you tell me this before? Caldwell asked, his voice trembling with anger. Because it would not have changed your actions, Nox replied. You would still fight for survival, as you are doing now. The truth is only a distraction. Before Caldwell could respond, the lab's communication system crackled to life. Kara's voice came through, tense and urgent. Dr. Caldwell, you need to see this. The sky. It's not normal. Caldwell and Nox exchanged a glance before rushing to the surface. The colony's entrance had been sealed, but a narrow tunnel led to a hidden observation point. Caldwell climbed the ladder, his heart pounding as he reached the top. What he saw froze him in place. The sky was alive with color. Swirling streams of green and gold light rippled across the horizon, casting an otherworldly glow over the landscape. At first, it looked beautiful, like the auroras back on Earth. But then Caldwell saw the source. A massive structure hung in the sky, its jagged edges glowing with pulsating energy. It was unlike anything Caldwell had ever seen, both organic and mechanical in design. It wasn't a ship. It was something more, something alive. Nox climbed up behind him, its eyes fixed on the structure. The first wave has arrived, it said. A harvester drone. It will scan the planet, searching for life. If it finds even the smallest trace, it will call the fleet. Caldwell felt a surge of panic. We shut everything down. We buried ourselves. It shouldn't be able to detect us. It shouldn't, Nox agreed. Unless something, or someone, has given it a signal. Caldwell turned to Nox, his stomach twisting. What are you saying? There is a traitor among you, Nox said, its voice calm but cold. Someone has sent a signal to the harvesters, perhaps out of fear, or desperation, or greed. But the result is the same. The drone knows you are here. Back in the colony, Caldwell called an emergency meeting. The settlers gathered in the main hall, their faces pale with fear. The news of a traitor spread quickly, and the room buzzed with accusations and denials. Marcus Hale stood, his voice rising above the chaos. We don't need to play this guessing game. It's obvious who's behind this. It's that thing. He pointed at Nox, his scared face twisted with anger. It's been leading them here from the start. Caldwell stepped forward, his voice firm. Enough, Marcus. Nox destroyed the scout ship. It warned us about the harvesters. If it wanted us dead, it wouldn't need to betray us. It could do it itself. Then who? Marcus demanded. Who would betray their own people? The room fell silent. Caldwell's eyes scanned the crowd, searching for any sign of guilt. But everyone looked equally terrified, equally uncertain. Knox spoke, its voice cutting through the tension. The signal did not come from fear. It came from knowledge. Whoever sent it believed they were saving humanity, not destroying it. Caldwell's mind raced. The traitor wasn't a coward. They were someone who thought they were doing the right thing. Someone who believed the harvesters could be reasoned with or bargained with. Someone who couldn't accept the idea of hiding underground like animals. And in that moment, Caldwell knew exactly who it was. "Kara," he said, his voice heavy with sorrow. All eyes turned to the young farmer, who stood frozen in place, her face pale. "I didn't. I thought," she stammered. "They promised they wouldn't hurt us. They said we could coexist." Caldwell's heart sank. "You don't coexist with the harvesters," he said. "You survive them, or you die." The room erupted in chaos, but Knox raised a hand, silencing everyone. "It does not matter now. The drone knows you are here. The question is whether you are ready to face what comes next." Caldwell stared at Knox, his mind racing. They had been betrayed, their hiding place exposed. But there was still a chance, however slim, that they could turn this disaster into an opportunity. It was time to stop running. It was time to fight. The battle for survival. The settlers stood frozen, the weight of Kara's betrayal heavy in the air. Her tear-filled eyes darted around the room, pleading for understanding, but none came. Dr. Caldwell felt his chest tighten as he looked at her, torn between anger and pity. She wasn't evil. She was desperate. But desperation had consequences, and now the harvesters knew exactly where they were. Knox's voice broke the silence, calm and precise. "The drone will not wait. It is already scanning the area for weaknesses. It will send a signal to the fleet soon." "How do we stop it?" Caldwell asked, his voice sharp. "You said we couldn't fight them. But we have to, don't we?" Knox tilted its head slightly, its metallic skin reflecting the dim light of the room. "You cannot destroy it with your technology. But you can slow it down, if you are willing to sacrifice." The room erupted in chaos. People shouted, arguing over whether to listen to Knox, whether to abandon the colony entirely, or whether to fight against impossible odds. Caldwell raised his hands, shouting above the din, "Enough. This is not the time for panic. We need a plan." Knox stepped forward, its glowing eyes scanning the room. "I will confront the drone. My abilities will disrupt its signal temporarily. But it will not be enough to stop the fleet. You must use this time to disable its core." "Disable its core? With what?" Marcus Hale's voice was loud and angry. But this time, it wasn't directed at Knox. "We don't have the kind of weapons you're talking about." "You have me," Knox replied. "I can amplify your colony's power into a directed energy pulse. But the drone's defenses will retaliate. Anyone near the core will not survive." A heavy silence fell over the room. The settlers looked at one another, fear etched into their faces. No one spoke. No one volunteered. Caldwell felt his hands tremble. He wanted to believe there was another way, but Knox's cold logic was unflinching. Someone would have to make the ultimate sacrifice. And even then, it might not be enough. "I'll do it," Kara said suddenly, her voice trembling but resolute. All eyes turned to her, shock and anger flaring in equal measure. "You've done enough," Marcus shouted, his fists clenched. "You're the reason we're in this mess." "And that's why it has to be me," Kara shot back, her voice stronger now. "I made the mistake. I thought they could be reasoned with. I was wrong. But if I can fix this, even a little, I have to try." Caldwell stared at her, his mind racing. He wanted to argue, to stop her, but deep down, he knew she was right. She had made a mistake, yes, but she was also willing to face the consequences. That kind of courage was rare. As the settlers scrambled to prepare for the mission, Knox led Caldwell to the edge of the colony, where the drone hovered like a mechanical vulture in the sky. Its jagged form pulsed with energy, casting an eerie glow over the barren landscape. Caldwell couldn't help but feel like an ant staring up at a boot, waiting for it to crush him. "This drone is only a fraction of their power," Knox said quietly. "If it succeeds in sending its signal, the harvesters will arrive in full force. Nothing will survive." Caldwell clenched his fists. "Then we won't let it succeed." Knox turned to him, its expression unreadable. "You will need to trust me fully, Samuel. There is no margin for error." For the first time, Caldwell heard something in Knox's voice that almost sounded like fear. It was faint, buried beneath its usual calm demeanor, but it was there. Whatever Knox was, it wasn't invincible, and it knew that. The plan was as simple as it was dangerous. Knox would engage the drone directly, using its unique abilities to draw its attention. While the drone's focus was diverted, Kara and a small team would plant the energy pulse device, a makeshift weapon Knox had constructed using the colony's power core. Once activated, the pulse would overload the drone's systems, disabling it permanently. But the risks were enormous. The device's activation would create a chain reaction, releasing a burst of energy strong enough to destroy anything within its radius. Whoever stayed to activate it wouldn't have time to escape. As the settlers prepared for the mission, Caldwell found himself alone with Knox. He watched as it adjusted the device, its movements precise and efficient. "You've been planning for this, haven't you?" Caldwell asked. Knox didn't look up. "I have been planning for many outcomes. This was always one of them." "Do you think we'll survive?" Caldwell asked quietly. Knox paused, then turned to face him. "Survival is never guaranteed, Samuel. It is earned, and it is not always without cost." Caldwell nodded, his chest tight with emotion. "You talk about survival like it's a numbers game. But these people, they're not numbers. They're families, friends. They matter." Knox's glowing eyes flickered faintly. "That is what makes you different from the harvesters, and it is why you must succeed." The mission began under the cover of darkness. Knox stepped into the open field, its metallic form glowing brighter with every step. The drone immediately reacted, its jagged body shifting and pulsating as it prepared to strike. Energy beams rained down from the sky, but Knox moved with impossible speed, evading the attacks with precision. Inside the colony, Kara and her team worked quickly, carrying the device through the tunnels that led to the drone's core. Caldwell stayed behind, monitoring their progress from the control room. His hand shook as he watched the screens, each second feeling like an eternity. Outside, Knox unleashed its full power, its body morphing and shifting as it fought the drone. It fired bursts of energy that disrupted the drone's attacks, creating just enough of an opening for Kara's team to reach their target. "We're in position." Kara's voice crackled over the communicator. "Activating the device now." Caldwell's breath caught in his throat. "Kara, get out of there." "No time," she replied, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "Tell everyone. I'm sorry, and thank you." The line went silent. Seconds later, a blinding flash lit up the night, and the ground shook violently. Caldwell shielded his eyes as the energy pulse rippled outward, consuming the drone in a wave of light. When the dust settled, the drone was gone, its massive form reduced to smoking debris. But Kara was gone too. Back in the colony, the settlers gathered in silence. The air was heavy with grief, but also with a quiet sense of victory. They had stopped the drone. They had bought themselves time. Caldwell stood at the edge of the settlement, staring out at the horizon. Knox stood beside him, its glow dim but steady. "The fleet will come," Knox said softly, "but they will not come as quickly. You have earned a reprieve." "At what cost?" Caldwell asked, his voice breaking. Knox didn't answer. It didn't need to. The cost was etched into every face in the colony, every tear shed for Kara and the others who had sacrificed themselves. But as Caldwell looked out at the stars, he felt a spark of hope. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Origins of the legacy. The colony was quiet in the days following the battle. The settlers mourned their loss, but knew they couldn't dwell on it for long. The harvesters were still out there, and the reprieve bought with Kara's sacrifice wouldn't last forever. Deep underground, the colony's leaders gathered to plan their next steps, while Dr. Caldwell and Knox worked in the lab, searching for a way to turn hope into survival. Caldwell stared at the wreckage they had salvaged from the drone, spread out across the lab like the remains of a dissected beast. The alien technology pulsed faintly, its mechanisms beyond anything Caldwell had ever seen. Yet, as he examined it, a strange sense of familiarity began to take hold. "These systems," Caldwell muttered, running his fingers along the smooth vein-like circuits. "They're similar to your design. Almost identical, actually." Knox stepped forward, its glowing eyes scanning the debris. "They are. The harvesters use technology derived from the same source that created me." Caldwell frowned. "How? You said you escaped them. Are you saying they're your creators?" "Not mine," Knox replied, its voice calm but weighted. "But their kind has influenced much of what exists in the galaxy. The harvesters are not a singular force. They are the remnants of a failed experiment, a project meant to create beings like me, capable of adapting and thriving in any environment." Caldwell felt a chill run down his spine. A failed experiment. What happened? "They became what you see now," Knox said, gesturing toward the drone's remains. "Without purpose or morality, they turned on their creators, consuming everything in their path. Their hunger is endless because they were never designed to stop. I am their opposite, built not to consume but to preserve." Caldwell's mind raced. If the harvesters and Knox shared a common origin, it meant there was a chance, however slim, that Knox might hold the key to defeating them. But it also raised another question, one that had been gnawing at him since the beginning. "Why do you care about us?" Caldwell asked, his voice low. "You could have left. You could have ignored this colony. Let us fend for ourselves. Why stay?" Knox's eyes flickered faintly, as if considering the question. "Because your ancestors believed in something greater than survival. They believed in the potential of humanity. I was made to honor that belief, to protect what they saw in you." Caldwell's throat tightened. For all its cryptic words and alien nature, Knox was still connected to his family's legacy, a legacy he had spent his life trying to live up to, never fully understanding its depth. Now, faced with the truth, he felt both pride and an overwhelming sense of responsibility. That night, Caldwell called a meeting of the colony's leaders. The settlers gathered in the central hall, their faces worn but resolute. Caldwell stood at the front, Knox by his side, its presence both a comfort and a reminder of what they faced. "We've learned something important," Caldwell began. "The harvesters aren't invincible. They're powerful, yes, but they're also flawed. They were created, just like Knox, and that means they can be stopped." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, a flicker of hope igniting in their eyes. "How?" Marcus Hale asked, his voice cautious. "How do we stop something like that?" Caldwell turned to Knox, who stepped forward, its voice steady and unwavering. "The harvesters are driven by a central force, a command network that links them together. If we disrupt that network, we can cripple their ability to coordinate and consume. They will be reduced to scattered fragments, unable to continue their assault. And how do we do that?" Marcus pressed. "We're farmers and engineers, not soldiers." Caldwell took a deep breath. "We have something they don't." Knox. The settlers looked at the glowing figure, their expressions a mix of fear and awe. Knox, for its part, remained still, its metallic form gleaming faintly in the dim light. "I can interface with their network," Knox explained. "But doing so will require reaching their command ship. It is the heart of their operation, heavily guarded and deep in orbit. If I succeed, I can overload the network, severing their connection. But the process will destroy me. The room fell silent. Caldwell's chest tightened. He had suspected this would be the case, but hearing it aloud made the weight of the decision unbearable. "There has to be another way," he said, his voice trembling. "We can't ask you to." "You are not asking," Knox interrupted. "This is my purpose. I exist to protect, to preserve. If my destruction ensures your survival, it is a small price to pay." Caldwell looked at the settlers, at their tired but determined faces. He saw families huddled together, children clutching their parents' hands, people who had already lost so much. Knox was right. This was their only chance. The launch was hastily prepared. Using parts salvaged from the drone, the colonists retrofitted an old cargo ship, equipping it with a cloaking device and enough energy to reach the command ship. Knox boarded without hesitation, its movements calm and purposeful. Caldwell stood at the base of the ramp, his heart heavy. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. Knox turned, its glowing eyes meeting Caldwell's. Humanity has always asked itself what it is willing to sacrifice to survive. Today, you have your answer. Caldwell nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Knox stepped onto the ship, its metallic form disappearing into the shadows. The settlers watched from the surface as the cargo ship disappeared into the sky, its faint glow fading into the stars. Minutes felt like hours as they waited, their breaths held in collective anticipation. Then the sky lit up. A wave of energy rippled across the heavens, brighter than anything they had ever seen. The Harvester's command ship detonated in a fiery explosion, and the smaller drones that had begun to encircle the planet faltered, their movements erratic and disorganized. The colony erupted in cheers and tears, their cries echoing through the underground halls. They had done it. They had survived. Days later, Caldwell stood at the edge of the settlement, looking up at the now quiet sky. The Harvesters were gone, their threat neutralized, at least for now. But the cost weighed heavily on him. Knox was gone, its sacrifice a reminder of what it meant to truly protect something you believed in. In the lab, Caldwell found a small device left behind by Knox, a simple glowing sphere. When he touched it, a message played, Knox's voice calm and steady. "Your legacy is not in what you create, but in what you choose to protect. Remember that." Caldwell closed his eyes, holding the sphere tightly. Humanity had been given a second chance, and he vowed not to waste it.